News!
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're gonna kick it off with the Matchroom Monte Carlo show.
Guys will bear with me as I'm still battling bronchitis.
In the women's lightweight division, to my surprise, Beatriz Ferreira was overpowered by a very game Elif Turhan. Knocked down 2 times in the first round and beaten into submission in the 5th.
What we saw.
Well, Elif Turhan is not a fighter who's big on fundamentals. She's not big on X's and O's. And you can see that right away, the way that she overcommits to her power shots. She puts everything in those punches.
Looping punches, wild sweeping hooks.
So this is a fighter who, while not big on fundamentals, really believes in their power, sacrificing quite a bit of form to deliver those power shots. And whenever Elif did connect with a punch, you could see the effect right away. Whereas Beatriz Ferreira, the then IBF champion, was intended to be the more well-schooled boxer of the two, the standout amateur. But I say it all the time, the amateurs and the pros really are different beasts.
And I guess that this fight would service as another example of that. Being honest with you, I expected Beatriz to beat Elif Turhan.
I felt that Beatriz likely punches just as hard as Elif Turhan, but she's got better X's and O's. I did not expect that the difference in power would be that dramatic between the two, because there were moments where Beatriz Ferreira did get in with some good, clean punches, but they had no effect on Elif Turhan. It was a dramatic difference, but that really is all there was to it. Elif brought the bigger guns to the gun show, and she overpowered Beatriz. Noticeable stoicism from Elif when it was all over. You didn't see her jumping up and down.
You didn't see her celebrating or nothing. People in her corner seemed more happy about it than she did.
So now the IBF title has changed hands, and Elif Turhan is one of 4 reigning champions at this weight. There is WBA champion Stephanie Hahn, WBC champion Caroline Dubois, and WBO champion Terry Harper. Now, we already know that Stephanie Hahn is going to be facing Holly Holm on the undercard of Serrano versus Cruz 2. Caroline Dubois,
she's supposed to be migrating from boxer over to MVP. Terry Harper, Terry's already over there. She just has yet to make her debut.
And I don't think any of these aforementioned champions are going to want to give Elif Turhan the time of day. Because so many of them are already with MVP, they've got their own thing going, their own insulated situation, that they're not going to roll the dice with a dangerous puncher like Elif Turhan, who she reminds me of is a female Bakram Murtazaliev.
The terrible Turk has fast become the bogey woman of the lightweight division, and I don't think any of these champions are going to be in any hurry to face her.
Performance really blew me away because, as stated, I expected Beatriz Ferreira to win the fight. I expected Beatriz to beat Elif Turhan. Watching her get ragdolled like that, manhandled, it was not on my bingo card. So, congratulations to Elif Turhan, but there is such a thing as being too good for your own good. And I think a lot of these fighters, they're not going to want no parts of her. Now, over to the PBC on Prime pay-per-view, where O'Shaquie Foster successfully defended his WBC super featherweight title. Sort of.
We know that Stephen Fulton came in a few pounds over the contracted limit, and thus he was not eligible to win O'Shaquie's title.
Instead, had he won, he would have got a WBC interim title in the lightweight division. Doesn't really matter now because he didn't win anyway. Another glaring example of what happens when you put a top-ranked fighter in the same ring as a PBC fighter.
The difference in class, sharpness, speed, ring savvy was noticeable from the onset.
O'Shaquie was basically beating Stephen Fulton with one hand. Could say that most of what he did was jab work, beating Stephen Fulton to the punch, controlling him with that lead hand.
Stephen Fulton couldn't find a way around it.
And that pretty much was the story of the fight. A judicious lead hand from O'Shaquie Foster, only occasionally putting a backhand behind it. Moments in the fight, I felt like if he wanted to, he could have put the screws to Stephen Fulton, really stepped into his punches and beat him up.
If he wanted to, but he chose to do just enough. Just enough that he's winning the rounds.
Not being overzealous or greedy with his work, O'Shaquie Foster was the noticeably faster fighter of the two, sharper.
Clearly he had better range control.
And in those few moments where they did trade, where there were exchanges, O'Shaquie won those too. I mean, this was a really lopsided affair. So now I imagine that O'Shaquie will return to the super featherweight division, still being WBC champion there, and he might target the winner of the upcoming Navarrete versus Nunez fight.
I imagine that's what he's gonna do, but what Stephen Fulton's gonna do, I'm not sure, because this was intended to be his super featherweight debut, and he blew the weight.
Does that even happen? So he can't make 130 pounds? I don't think he's got the chops for 135. Doesn't have the physical dimensions, the punching power, the sharpness,
But he clearly can't make 126, can't make 130 either, so he's kind of just stuck there at 135.
up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. He got outclassed yesterday, as PBC fighters often do when confronted with top-ranked guys. That's just another one for the record books. Congratulations to O'Shaquie Foster.
In the main event, we saw Isaac Cruz and Lamont Roach fight to a draw.
I want to say that Isaac Cruz started off the fight strong, like I expected him to, very aggressive, scoring a knockdown off a well-placed left hook in the exchange that sent Lamont Roach careening across the ring into the ropes. At the start, Isaac definitely seemed the stronger puncher of the two, but you notice that as the fight progressed, his punches were losing steam. He was not able to sustain that same attack that he started off with, and Lamont Roach was able to adapt, acclimate to the man in front of him, start having success of his own.
Banking rounds of his own.
As Isaac Cruz started slowing down, Lamont Roach was able to find his way into this fight. Not a bad effort from either. I think the more eye-catching punches were coming from Isaac, but the problem is, in the second half of the fight, that wasn't happening often enough. So it really felt like the fight was getting away from Isaac.
That and he got a point deducted.
Yeah, that really didn't help Isaac's situation, because if not for that point deduction, Isaac might have won the fight by a point due to the knockdown early in the fight. I actually agreed with the draw. I had it 5 rounds to 5 after 10. I gave Lamont Roach the 11th round and Isaac Cruz the 12th round.
6 rounds to 6, tie score.
It was a good fight. It was entertaining. I feel like it was a tale of two halves. The first half belongs to Isaac Cruz, and the back end, second half, that goes to Lamont. I agree with the draw. Immediately after the fight, there was talk of an immediate rematch.
Question for each fighter, just one each. Lamont, congrats on a great fight. Isaac, saludos por la gran pelea. Lamont, do you want an immediate rematch, and how do you see why do you think you will win an immediate rematch in decisive fashion?
Of course, I think the best thing to do is move forward with an immediate rematch, and I would say on somewhat a level playing field. I don't know why they think that the judge or the ref was on my side when I got hit low a lot. I got hit low a lot. I mean, it's boxing. It happens. I got hit low a lot, and he was holding every exchange. So, I'm not complaining. It was for a hell of a fight, but it's no. I really wish that it's just an even playing field. That's all.
Sean, before you continue, let me let Isaac know what Lamont was saying. Bueno, entonces Isaac, lo que acá Lamont dijo fue que fue una gran pelea, pero que vos también estabas golpeando bajo mucho y que también estabas agarrando mucho. Entonces, eso fue lo que él pensó de esta pelea.
¿Y los rabbit punch?
What about the rabbit punches?
¿No cuentan?
They don't count? What happened? You're complaining about the low blows, basically, but what about
Atrás
the
de la
punches?
oreja.
Yeah,
Golpe bueno.
The hits to the ear, that was a good punch.
Cabezazo.
The
¿Sí, good?
headbutts, what
¿De
about the
cabezazo? ¿Sí, good? Punch. No.
Go ahead, Sean. Sorry for the interruption.
Isaac, do you want an immediate rematch? And obviously he feels he won the fight and he gave his reasons why. What are your reasons you feel you won the fight? And again, do you want an immediate rematch?
Bueno, primero que nada, ¿te gustaría tener una revancha inmediata contra Roach? Y segundo, ¿qué opinas de lo que él justamente acaba de decir, no?
¿Quiere revancha la gente? Hagámosla. Yo no soy David, estoy listo para la revancha.
Okay, do the fans want a rematch? Do you guys want a rematch? I'm not Gervonta Davis. I'm ready for a rematch.
Why does he feel he won the fight? What did he do to feel
Y tus conclusiones de la pelea en general, más allá de lo que dijo la mano.
Estoy feliz con mi desempeño y bueno, callamos una vez más bocas para toda la gente que decía que no sabíamos boxear. Callamos bocas y lo demostramos.
Look, I'm very happy with my performance, and I'm glad that I was able to shut some people up that were saying that I wasn't tactical enough or not smart enough. I thought I checked all the boxes today.
Talk about whether or not there's going to be an immediate rematch between these two. I think that all depends on the commercial success of the first fight, how much they made at the gate, and how many pay-per-views they did or didn't sell. That's what will determine whether or not there is an immediate rematch, I think. Not dissimilar from what you hear me say about Pacquiao versus Barrios. There's a reason they didn't do an immediate rematch for that fight. It's likely because the first one didn't make a lot of money.
So what are you going to waste time doing a second one for?
Didn't you guys notice that after the fight there was no talk of an immediate rematch between Manny and Mario? Now these two boys, Isaac and Lamont, they might agree in principle to a second fight, but whether or not it happens all comes down to the financials.
When's a rematch?
Well, rematches are often won by the fighter who can change, the fighter who can adapt, and I think that's more Lamont Roach than Isaac Cruz. I think if Isaac were going to beat Lamont, this would have been his best bet.
To beat him now while he's debuting at 140 pounds and still new to the weight?
Fight him again, and he's got all the experiences from the first fight to draw from, and he'll be further acclimated to this weight than he was the first time out. So I do lean towards Lamont to perhaps win the second fight, if there is a second fight, because like I said, whether or not they do it, all boils down to the financials.
Overall, not a bad fight, not a bad card.
Though still somewhat overpriced, too many things started to go wrong during fight week. The whole thing with Yanni Beck pissing hot.
Stephen Fulton missing weight.
Not a bad card, not bad, but it could have been better. Finally, in the Southern Hemisphere, Jai Opetaia successfully defended the red and gold title against mandatory challenger Hussein Cinkara, said to have had a contusion on the brain with a small brain bleed and a slightly fractured C1 vertebrae. The brutal reality of this is that Cinkara becomes the fifth out of the last 6 Jai Opetaia opponents who have been taken to the hospital. The way that it was, Hussein Cinkara was good enough to at least go a few rounds with Jai Opetaia, and I believe that it was in the second where he landed a big bomb of his own, buckling Jai Opetaia.
Yeah, he landed a bomb.
But it was one of those fights where the more time that lapses, the slower Hussein becomes, the heavier his hands get, the easier he is to hit, because after a while, he was just moving around, just trying to survive.
Trying not to stay in one spot too long as to not make himself a stationary target for Jai Opetaia, who was trying his best to jump all over him.
So that, in the 8th, he can get in with a hard left-hand counter that ended the fight. And Hussein Cinkara didn't look any more capable out there against Jai than Claudio Sequeiro, David Naika, Jordan Thompson, any of these guys that Jai has been fighting.
But he can only fight who's in front of him, and he can only fight who's willing. When the champions rather do other things...
When Azerto Ramirez is more interested in fighting a David Benavidez instead of unifying with a champion at his own weight, when Badu Jack...
He's got to fight Michelian again. What's Jai supposed to do?
I think the most natural answer you're going to get from a lot of people when it comes to Jai Opetaia is, if you can't get the big fights at cruiserweight, just move up to heavyweight. And I think that Jai Opetaia is reluctant to do that, given his physical dimensions, that he's not actually a very big cruiserweight. Doesn't have all that much height, doesn't have all that much reach, doesn't walk around that heavy either.
I don't think he's in any hurry to move up to the heavyweight division. What else was peculiar about this weekend's cruiserweight title fight is that it wasn't on DAZN. It was shown here in the United States via UFC Fight Pass.
That was really odd. Gave rise to suspicions that perhaps Jai Opetaia is not with Matchroom anymore, and yet you heard Matchroom mentioned several times on the card. I'm not sure that that's the case. In any event, for Jai Opetaia, it would be unwise to separate from Matchroom, because being with Matchroom is all that keeps him talked about on a global stage. If not for that, he'd just be some guy from Australia with a belt.
You know, I don't know if he's separated from Matchroom or not. I'm just saying that there is still something to be derived from that relationship. Having Eddie Hearn in your corner bridges the gap between your audience in Australia and the rest of the world.
Gotta understand, if not for that, Jai Opetaia would probably be a very easy fighter to ignore if you don't have Eddie Hearn constantly bringing him up and tying his name to a Zurdo Ramirez fight.
The David Benavidez fight.
So maybe Jai Opetaia might seem like little more than just a local Aussie fighter. Eddie Hearn is an international promoter with an international megaphone. I don't know if Jai has separated from Matchroom, but it would be very unwise if he has.
He still needs Eddie.
At the same time, I still can't figure out why his fight was on UFC Fight Pass here in the United States and not on DAZN. What does that herald? What was that all about? In beating Hussein Cinkara, that takes care of Jai Opetaia's mandatory obligations for the foreseeable future, until such a time as the IBF stages another final eliminator and another mandatory is crowned. So what exactly the future holds for Jai, I'm not sure. Though I, like a lot of people, would prefer to see him in there with somebody better than the guys he's been fighting. But he can only fight who's willing.
That's really not a long list of guys.